Fun fact, I have this tattooed on me. It's the reason I bought this cup. But there's my caffeine tattoo. I bought this cup when we were visiting my sister. There's lipstick. We were visiting my sister in Oahu, and I bought this cup. So, hello, people of the internet. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you are having a great day. I'm having a great day, great week. Hope you have okay weather where you are. It is gross kind of here, but it's very fall, and I actually like that. I think growing up in the Pacific Northwest has enabled me to enjoy weather like this more than if I grew up in Tennessee or grew up in Florida. So it kind of reminds me of home a little bit. Intro, who am I? My name is Ronnie Jo, and I'm a dietitian who does things here on the internet and on YouTube. So I'm in a different spot again. I think I'm actually going to stay in this spot. I'm in our spare room, and it's fairly empty as you can see, but I think it has a good background. And there's some natural light. I'm in front of a window right now, but I am not facing the sun, and it's like cloudy today. So I have my ring light again, and I think I like being this close to the camera. Maybe, I don't know. So today's video is part 4, yes, and it's the final part of my body image, health, fat, all of that series. I am excited for this video. It's more sciencey, so please hang in there with me. But first, as always, disclaimer. This video is for educational entertainment purposes only. Please speak to a healthcare professional who knows you personally before you take advice from any stranger on the internet, myself included. Okay, so today's video is about dietary fat, dietary sugar, and how your metabolism works with all of it. So dietary fat and dietary sugar differ from the actual fat you have on your body and your actual blood sugar. And I think that's where a lot of confusion comes from, and that's why I really want to talk about how dietary fat affects you and how dietary sugar affects you, because it's not straightforward as you may think it is. And then I'm going to talk about your metabolism and the factors that go into determining how fast or how slow, because I do hear a lot of people say, oh, I have really fast metabolism. My metabolism sucks. So we're going to kind of go over why it's perceived that way and if it actually is that way. So first, dietary fat. Dietary fat exists in different forms. It exists as unsaturated, saturated, and trans fat. I have gone over them previously, but I do feel it is important whenever I talk about them to go over them again. It took me a really long time to learn them, and so I want to make sure that we all understand the fats as I talk about them. So, saturated fat is most commonly from animal sources. Think solid at room temperature is saturated fat. This also includes coconut oil. Most coconut oils are solid at room temperature. The main difference in coconut oil versus animal fat sources is that coconut oil does not contain dietary cholesterol, but we will talk about that later. Unsaturated fats come from mostly vegetable oils, nuts, seeds, and avocados. Trans fats are the only fat that I encourage you to not eat any of if you can, because it has no benefits on our health. So you can find trans fats in mostly overly processed goods. Think fast food, because trans fat doesn't break down as easy, and so it's more economically sound for a fast food restaurant to use an oil that doesn't break down. And also in ingredients labels in the store, you'll see hydrogenated oils. It's also required to be on the nutrition facts label. but serving size gets wonky. So just look for hydrogenated oils. Try not to consume trans fats. The debate nowadays comes from saturated versus unsaturated fat and their perceived pros and cons. Most studies indicate that consuming most of your fats from unsaturated sources is the most beneficial for your health. However, this doesn't mean that you need to avoid saturated fats completely. Some saturated fat sources, like eggs, have a host more benefits than outweigh the negative effects of the saturated fat. Same goes for red meat. Red meat has a lot of iron and protein, and so that doesn't, like the saturated fat does not negate the nutritional content of the red meat. The problem that we reach when it comes to Americans' consumption of red meat is that red meat, especially processed red meat, usually contains a lot of sodium, like bacon, for an example, and we know that Americans consume way too much sodium on average, and so being mindful and consuming red meat in moderation, of course, is the best way to consume red meat for your health and for the general public's health. Now, when it comes to dietary fats' effect on your body, there's several schools of thought. So fat delays the emptying of your stomach. Fats are also really hard to break down, so they will cause some inflammation. And the fat will either get stored in the body, used for energy immediately, or made into triglycerides or cholesterol in your blood. So there's 3 routes. So one of them is stored as fat. So one of them is dietary fat becoming fat, but the other 2 are used for energy and made into different things for different purposes in your body. So that's the beginning. Like I said, fats take a lot of work to break down and be absorbed. Most everything in your body is water-based. And if you've ever had a salad dressing that has an oil and a liquid, they don't like to mix. So it's very hard for lipids or fats to cross the barrier into your blood. We have a lot of mechanisms in place to help with this. Think bile from your liver and your gallbladder. We also have lots of enzymes from different places in your body that help with this as well. When the fat gets broken down into fatty acids and glycerol, it'll either get used for energy or it'll get repackaged as triglycerides or cholesterol. And to get into your blood, these triglycerides or cholesterol get attached to a protein, so they become a lipoprotein, lipid protein, lipoprotein magic. And the lipoproteins can more easily cross into your blood. Now, they are still a little bit big. And so the lipoprotein kind of travels in your lymphatic system that runs parallel to your circulatory system. And when they need to go back into your blood, then they'll cross that barrier. But that's how you get triglycerides and cholesterol transported into your blood. Now, the triglycerides usually end up being stored as adipose tissue or fat tissue for later use when you don't have enough energy or sugar is no longer available to run your metabolism. Cholesterol goes throughout your body as either high density lipoproteins, HDL cholesterol, or low density lipoproteins or LDL cholesterol. The HDL cholesterol goes out into your body and collects excess cholesterol, brings it back to your liver so that you can dispose of it. The LDL cholesterol goes out and delivers cholesterol to different parts of your body. Both are important, but you want to have more HDL cholesterol because this will help better regulate the amount of cholesterol that exists in your body. Now, when it comes to intake of saturated fats and unsaturated fats, your body handles them slightly differently from each other. Saturated fats are chains of fatty acids that are saturated with hydrogen, hence the name saturated fat, making them a lot harder to break down than their unsaturated counterparts. And because it already takes a lot to break fats down, this means that saturated fats are going to have a higher inflammatory response, and they are also going to most likely increase the level of LDL cholesterol, those low density lipoprotein cholesterol in your blood, which can build up as plaque in your blood vessels and can lead to cardiovascular disease and stroke and all sorts of not great things. But it should be noted that this is very complex, and consuming saturated fat alone will not cause you to have a stroke. The reason I suggest consuming most of your fats from unsaturated sources is because unsaturated fat sources have a host more benefits than their saturated counterparts. They help regulate blood sugar, help regulate blood pressure, they help control appetite, and they tend to be lower in sodium as well, helping to decrease the inflammation and blood pressure in your body. Dietary fats, as mentioned before, all have some level of inflammation to break down. This is just what happens. The saturation and the ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s will determine the amount of inflammation that they cause. Now, as I've said before, your body needs some inflammation to run basic functions, but too much inflammation or chronic inflammation can lead to a host of negative health effects like decreased sleep, decreased mood, increased bloating, irregular bowel movements, just a whole bunch of not great things. I could list more. Omega-6s are unsaturated. They do increase inflammation, and omega-3s are unsaturated and they decrease inflammation. Fats with higher levels of omega-3s include nuts, seeds, and avocados. When it comes to oils, flaxseed oil actually has a 53% omega-3 content. However, any oils that have more unsaturated fatty acids versus saturated fatty acids will help decrease inflammation. These oils include olive oil, corn oil, walnut, and safflower oil. And all of these oils can be used for very different purposes. An extra virgin olive oil that is not refined or overly processed is what I suggest as the most universal, and it's a little bit more on the cheaper side when it comes to specialty oils. Now, the cheapest oil, vegetable oil, I do have some notes on. So it's a blend of different vegetable oils, hence the name. I don't particularly like vegetable oil because it will list the vegetable oils that are in it, but it won't tell you the amount of each vegetable oil that is in it. And so you don't really know what you're getting. It tends to be very refined and overly processed, which will decrease the overall nutrient value and increase the inflammatory response of the oil. But when used in moderation with other fat sources, it is cheap and very versatile as a cooking or baking oil. And now I know that was a lot. Hopefully I didn't traumatize anybody or make anybody hate me. But at the end of the day, I hope I got through to you that dietary fat does not necessarily translate into body fat, because it is extremely more complex than that. Now we're going to take a small intermission. You can get some coffee or some water, or I don't know, do something, and we'll be back to talk about dietary sugar.
That's just my baby dog. 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 Baby dog.
So, welcome back. Welcome back. I hope you had a good break. I just drank coffee and sat here and stared at myself in the ring light. Okay. I'm starting to not be able to see because of this ring light, but whatever. Here we are. And I keep accidentally kicking the stand. I'm sorry. Anyways, dietary sugar. Dietary sugar exists in different forms. For this video's purposes, I'm going to talk about sucrose, table sugar, glucose, your body or your blood sugar, and fructose/lactose, which is fruit sugar and dairy sugar. They are different, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to just put them together because essentially the same for this conversation. So, table sugar is sucrose. It is a disaccharide. Two monosaccharides together. These monosaccharides are glucose and fructose, the other sugars we're talking about. And when you eat sucrose, it gets broken into glucose and fructose in your body. Glucose is your body's favorite. It is used as immediate energy. Sucrose is fairly new to humans. It was really only discovered around the 11th century. Up until that point, we really only had like fructose and lactose and other really natural forms of sugar. These two sugars, fructose and lactose, take a little bit longer to be made into glucose in your body, which will help regulate the absorption of it and cause a more balanced effect in your blood sugar. The reason we love added sugar is because it usually exists as sucrose. And when compared to fructose or lactose, your brain releases more happy hormones when you consume sucrose because it's immediate energy. You can get glucose really fast from it, and it just kind of wants you to keep consuming it because it doesn't really know that you can have more of it later. Now, the problem comes when you overconsume sucrose because your body will store the excess sugar as fat, most likely. Once you have enough stored in your muscles, it'll store it as fat so that you can use it for later. Our bodies have not really evolved at the same rate that our availability to food has, and so we're always going to kind of want sucrose or table sugar. We also need sugar, whether it's from fruits or vegetables or dairy or grains or processed sugar, because our metabolism is set up in a way to run off of carbohydrates. I do suggest that most people consume most of their sugars, carbohydrates, from high fiber sources like fruits, vegetables, grains, and even dairy. Dairy doesn't really have fiber, but whatever. Because they do cause a more steady increase in your blood sugar and will help just regulate a lot more things. However, I encourage food freedom because when we restrict foods, you're more likely to overconsume them, especially sweets. And so you'll chase the satisfaction of that sweet and you'll probably end up eating more calories. Like you can't eat a banana and expect to get the satisfaction of a chocolate chip cookie. 1, the sugars are really different. 2, chocolate chip cookies are amazing. Also, chocolate chip cookies and any cookie has fat and sugar, so it's just gonna cause more satisfaction to your body overall. And if you're craving a cookie or any other dessert, I really encourage you to just eat that craving because it's better to consume one cookie than it would be to consume a banana and then get mad and consume 2 cookies. So sucrose isn't inherently bad, as I hope I just explained. It's just another form of sugar. Consuming, as I said, most of your sugars from fruits, vegetables, grains, and dairy will help regulate your blood sugar and your gut health. But consuming sucrose or processed sugar in baked goods can be very beneficial for your mental and emotional health too, because it's about balance, baby, balance. So, all in all, you should consume, for most adults, 20 to 30% of your energy from fat sources and 45 to 65% from carbohydrate sources. Because remember, carbs is what your metabolism runs on in its peak for most people. I, in general, suggest that the general adult consumes about 50 to 55% of their energy from carbohydrates, primarily high fiber carbohydrates, and 25 to 30% of your intake from fat, specifically unsaturated fatty acids, because this has proven to be the most beneficial for emotional, mental, physical health and well-being for most people. Of course, this varies from person to person for lots of different reasons. Now, I'm going to briefly expand on your metabolism and how it is influenced by different factors. So, the main determinants of your metabolism come from genetics. The sex you were assigned at birth, your family history. Some people lean more towards fat when running their metabolism, and some people lean heavily towards carbs when running their metabolism. But this requires genetic testing and can be very expensive. It's being done in research right now, which I'm really excited to see. But right now, it's just, we don't know a lot about it. And so most people tend to run their metabolism on carbohydrates from the science that we have right now. Another set of determinants comes from more modifiable factors, the amount of muscle mass you have, the amount of body fat you have, whether or not you're pregnant, activity levels, stress, water intake, and food intake all influence metabolism. Muscle requires a lot more energy to maintain, so your metabolism is going to be naturally higher because of that. Same goes for activity levels. If you have higher activity levels, you are going to burn more energy, and the same goes for if you are pregnant. Now, on the flip side, having too much stress, not consuming enough water, and not consuming enough calories can slow down your metabolism as your body is just trying to hold on for dear life and just trying to hold on to every nutrient so that you can maintain basic body functions. Now, the amount of fat you have on your body does influence your metabolism, and I want to talk a little bit more in depth about that. So, adipose tissue, which is your fat tissue, it is stored fat or stored energy because fat can be used as energy. Holds a lot of energy potential. You use it when you don't have enough energy, think starvation or ketosis. It also requires energy to maintain. The higher amount of body fat you have on your body, the more energy you will have to consume to maintain this body fat, which is just naturally increasing that part of your metabolism. However, this adipose tissue can increase inflammation and cause more stress on your circulatory system, which can lead you to hold on to every nutrient that you consume, which can make it really hard to lose weight, even though you are requiring more energy to maintain this. So it's kind of like a cycle. You do need some level of adipose tissue on your body for basic functions, but it varies a lot for different people based on a lot of the determinants that we have talked about earlier in this video. At the end of this day, your metabolism is working the best, it's working in its peak when you are eating enough, moving often, drinking enough water, and participating in activities that decrease your stress. And really, in reality, you are at peak health when you are also doing all of this. That was a long video. I hope that I really got through to everyone about the difference between dietary fat and dietary sugar and the amount of fat and the amount of sugar that you have in your body, as well as the kind of way that your metabolism is influenced by different things that you do. Thank you if you've made it to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing here. Next week's video, I think, is going to be about immunity in COVID because it is now November and we've been in this thing for a very long time. The last immunity video I did was at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I really want to go back over it with more knowledge that I have a year later. So in the meantime, though, please stay safe and please stay healthy. Goodbye.